What is up, PartnerUp? Yes, it is my voice instead of Jared's giving the iconic intro. Jared is under the weather today, so I'm taking this one solo. Really excited about this conversation. Before we jump in, I just want to throw in there a little shout out to the PartnerHacker team. I just was looking over the PartnerHacker Daily, the newsletter that we launched a little over a year ago, the #1 newsletter in partnerships. And it's just been super awesome to see that thing go from nothing to, I think we have around 6,000 members now, and putting the content together for that every day. And that is the PartnerHacker team, but they're just acting as kind of curators for like the whole ecosystem. We're just getting more and more all the time. We can't even keep up. All of you out there, PartnerUp listeners, people that follow us on social, people that are reading articles on partnerhacker.com, just sending us the best stuff that's out there in the partnerships ecosystem. So send in stuff if you want to PartnerHacker Daily, and subscribe, share it with your friends, get some subscribers. We usually do not do CTAs about subscribing to the newsletter or anything on here, but I've been like just stepping back and realizing what an amazing resource that newsletter is. So I had to shout it out. So enough of that. Now we're going to get into a conversation with somebody who knows a lot about success in really winning in an ecosystem. Connor Jeffers, founder, CEO of Aptitude 8, now also founder and CEO of Hapily, which is a software company that took some investment from HubSpot Ventures recently. We'll get into both of those. Connor, welcome to PartnerUp.
Hello, thank you. Lovely to see you.
You as well. I know I've mentioned this on a couple other like events and things we've been on, but you and I actually know each other from way back probably almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Because
I feel like you and I like bumping back into each other is just like the world is small manifested into reality of like, I was like, I worked with you. I worked with Praxis for a while. I was like a Praxis customer. I was a Praxis like advocate. And these were long before either of us had anything to do with the things that we're up to now.
Yeah. The closest, the connection is you were way ahead of the curve, at least ahead of me when it comes to marketing automation, HubSpot, using all these tools, and you were like constantly trying to get me to get Praxis leveled up and living in the future. I was pretty slow to move on those things, and man, you were proven right so well. So it's been just so wild to see, last year when you're like, wait, PartnerHacker, what are you doing playing in my playground now? Like what is going on here? So I want to get just a little bit of maybe you can help me fill in the gaps, from back then. I know you were working like a venture studio, and I know you were doing some other stuff as well. When did you make the move to launch Aptitude 8 and say, okay, I want to create I was going to say agency, but I know you don't like the word agency. So maybe you could tell me about that too. So if it's not an agency, what is it? And what was the impetus to launch and create Aptitude 8?
Yeah. So Aptitude 8 today is even different than what Aptitude 8 was. But Aptitude 8 today is a technical consulting firm, and we do implementation, integration, and optimization on the HubSpot platform. We'll talk a little bit about like what that means and how it's changed. But I think the background for me is when I was first working with you, I worked in sort of venture tech businesses for a while, ran growth teams, went to the venture side, was an operating partner at a venture studio out of Chicago. We built a handful of companies over there, which was super fun. And then I left. I had a business partner, and we were doing kind of like, we basically tried to do it again, which this will tie into the Hapily story a little bit too. But we were basically like, hey,
you can't stop doing this.
I can't. Yeah, exactly. That's like the running thread is like, I can't control myself or I can't focus, depending on which way you'd like to call it. But I think when we were doing the venture studio, we left, we started a new one. We were doing sort of like, hey, we'll do consulting and we'll fund the venture studio with consulting. And what we found out is like doing a venture studio without millions of dollars of LP's money is like really, really hard. So that didn't go anywhere, but we started to hit this nerve on the consulting side, and we were working with Salesforce Ventures. We were doing some stuff with HubSpot. We were basically coming into early stage organizations and helping them kind of like build their foundational technology stack and operating infrastructure and like how they build all of that stuff. And as we were doing that, I started to get more and more acquainted with HubSpot and what HubSpot was up to. And this was right when HubSpot started like investing in the CRM product. So HubSpot, the marketing software, right, was kind of like, hey, we only do marketing up to like 2014. Then they added Sales Hub, and Sales Hub started getting more and more interesting. My partner had a baby. He got a full-time offer from one of our clients. And I was kind of like, okay, what are we going to do now? And I was in Chicago for 10 years. And so I knew the model metrics guys and the Blue Wolf folks. And I like seen all these people build kick-ass companies in the Salesforce ecosystem, and always felt like I had missed that wave. I was really late to that party. And HubSpot started looking really, really interesting. And I started seeing them move in that direction and really stop behaving like a marketing software company and really start behaving like a CRM business, and sort of saw that starting to happen. And so with Aptitude 8, originally we did HubSpot work, we did Salesforce work, we worked with like Outreach and Marketo and all that stuff in the GTM stack. And then our HubSpot practice was just kind of like the fastest growing, the most interesting. And when HubSpot launched Operations Hub and custom objects, like everything vaulted ahead really, really quickly. And all of a sudden HubSpot was kind of this product that we could build really cool stuff on top of, and we weren't limited by as much functionality. And so we kind of doubled down on HubSpot itself. So today, Aptitude works with anybody. Basically, you either have to have HubSpot or you have to be interested in HubSpot, moving to HubSpot. And then we do a lot of work.
Curious.
HubSpot curious is a term that we like to use for sure. And if you are a HubSpot user, or if you're HubSpot curious, Aptitude helps you integrate, implement, and optimize the HubSpot platform. So that's what we're up to there.
It's been amazing to watch the HubSpot evolution as someone who, throughout my kind of entrepreneurial career over the last 10 years, I like used it early on, almost 10 years ago. I think you set it up. It was like, okay, some marketing automation stuff. And they sort of had like CRM-ish type stuff, but we still needed Salesforce. And it was kind of like, yeah, whatever. And then kind of didn't use it, and then used it again. And I've used it on and off. And every time I come back, I'm like, oh, wow, this is like really good now, to the point with PartnerHacker. We never used Salesforce. HubSpot was our CRM, and like never felt like we were missing something. I mean, it's just like, whoa, this is actually, they are in the game. And that's a really hard move to make when you're doing, a platform that's like trying to be multiple things to multiple different, right? That's very, very hard. So like, I'm very interested. We'll put a pin in this for a second to get into how HubSpot has done this, because I know you've got some really interesting opinions on kind of the epochs of HubSpot, and then what that means for partners as well. But agency, why, when I said when we were chatting before, I was like, hey, I'm going to ask you about starting an agency. You're like, yeah, we don't use the word agency. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So, and I think agencies are great. So I won't denigrate agencies. I think there's a lot of people, even in the HubSpot ecosystem, that are kind of like, we're not an agency. Agencies are dumb. And I don't think that's true at all. I think that like there's kind of this bad rap, but I think an agency is an organization that you work with in order to generate kind of an outcome, right? So you go to an agency because you want more leads, you want more opportunities, you want more closed revenue. And ultimately, when you think about working with an agency, the primary reason you're working with them is because you're trying to buy some kind of growth, whether it's revenue growth or lead growth or marketing growth or whatever. And the primary product that an agency sells is that we have some expertise on how we should access that. But what we have that you don't have is capabilities to be able to go and help you grow revenue. And we have some expertise and we can do all those things. Aptitude 8, by comparison, is none of our customers buy leads or revenue or growth from us at all. That we are effectively a construction company or an architecture company. And we really come in and we help you say, okay, you want to build a building. You want that building to have electricity. You want it to be 100 floors. You want it to be commercial grade. Like, we'll help you figure all of that out. We'll do all the plumbing. We'll do all the electricity. We'll wire up everything. We don't build buildings. All of this is kind of a CRM metaphor.
Yep. But I got you though. It's the difference between like, hey, you want us to build you a stadium that can accommodate 20,000 people on game day, and everyone will have a great experience, and it's going to maximize the amount of revenue you'll get from them, from concessions and all these different things. We'll do that. We're not going to drive the 20,000 attendees there for you.
Right.
That's a separate thing. We're going to
has nothing to do with us. And and I think that the difference there, right, is, and I don't think you can do both. I think you either are really good at construction and you're really good at building stuff and you really understand how that works, or you are really good at marketing services. And often what we see, I think, especially in the HubSpot ecosystem, is there's folks that are really good at drawing people to the stadium, and they know how to, they're like, okay, we need to fix a couple of these chairs. We might need to like add some, we think we should change the concession stands. And like, they're really good at that. And I think what we see is, so like, we have the largest technical consulting team in the HubSpot ecosystem by and large, because those are the only people we have. Like, everyone that works here is either a developer, a support resource, and our people ops team or operations team, or they're a technical consultant. That's everybody. There is no one else. And so we don't have account managers. I don't have content creators. I don't have marketing strategists. Like, I have nobody except for technical consultants. And so what we see in the market, like on the hiring side, is we have a lot of people that like, hey, I'm a technical consultant. I'm inside of a marketing agency or, a RevOps firm or whatever, but I primarily want to build stuff and I like to architect stuff and I like to solve those kinds of technical problems. And I maybe do that here, but I do it from the lens of, hey, we have to solve this problem in order to get to this next place. And they're kind of this bridge as opposed to they're the main show and the main event. And that's kind of where we focus.
That clarity of, hey, we do not do this and these are two separate things is it's just so refreshing to hear you say that, because all of a sudden I'm having these realizations of the times that I have worked with agencies in the past that have basically said, we'll do both of these things, right? We'll help you, we'll drive that growth, and then we'll salute. And I found one of the two things happen. Either I'm thinking, great, I'm going to see my traffic and my leads and my everything go up and to the right, and I'm paying them to do this. And instead I'm like, well, all they're doing is spending all this time dinking around making operational efficiencies. I paid them for growth because they told me they could do that. Or the other, they go out there and they get some activity churning, but our whole process is a mess. Yeah. No one can track or measure anything. And it's almost like the more it grows, the worse it gets. And then you're like, is the growth I'm paying for real growth? Like, okay, our numbers are up, but our revenue is the same. So are they just getting crappy leads, or is it because we're dropping those somewhere in the and you can't tell because this. So here's the question for you, and then we'll kind of get more into the partnership stuff. I know this is the PartnerUp podcast, but I can't help geeking out on some of this, marketing and early company stage stuff. Do you think there is a sequence that makes most sense? So if we're sticking with a stadium analogy, is it like, hey, wait till you're selling out and everybody's complaining about lines at the concession stand and then bring in the architects to make everything efficient? Or is it like, no, we do that from day one, set up everything, right? Because to me, that's a big investment.
Yeah.
But there's the cost of fixing it gets higher the longer you go. But on the other hand, as like a scrappy, bootstrappy type founder, I'm like, I don't want to worry about any of that stuff until
whether you have to survive. Like, I think that's really the question. Like, if you're in survival mode, like how effectively you're surviving, like, doesn't matter. You're just like, I'm eating, I'm drinking water. Like, I'm not dead. This is great. And like every day it's that problem. And someone's like, oh, well, we could get like the water a little bit faster and these things. And you're like, do we have water for tomorrow? And I think that's a very different mindset. And I think what we've done, and we certainly started of like, let's work with lots of really early stage companies. And we totally still do some of that. But I would say most of our work is these days, like larger scale organizations migrating from a Salesforce or a Dynamics and trying to like implement and build something new. And they're wanting all of the benefits that come with that, but they have a marketing team. They have an internal sales team. They're not trying to outsource some part of their core function. They're trying to build and migrate and create something new. Or we often see like very capitalized organizations trying to get up and do stuff. And I tell folks all the time, especially if like, hey, we're really early stage, we're really scrappy, we're not really focused on building this thing into this repeatable infrastructure model. We're really just trying to get something going right now. And my answer is like, don't work with hyper technical stuff. And I think that's one of the reasons you've seen HubSpot grow so effectively at that lower end of the market as well, is because it's fast to get up and running and you can do a lot of stuff yourself out of the box. And that makes it a default choice for a lot of these really early stage hyperscale companies, because when you're changing things so quickly and you're like, this is my business process this week, and next week we might do something completely different, you really need something that's hyper flexible.
Yeah. Their HubSpot's ability to scale all the way up is just massively impressive, to be something that you truly can use when you're a 3-person company and you're just going out of the box all the way up to, I mean, I don't know what the upward limit on HubSpot is, but it's been pretty cool to see that. So this kind of takes me into getting into the HubSpot ecosystem a little bit. You guys are like the fastest partner to ever reach HubSpot Elite certification. Yeah. So that signals to me that you're all in, you invested heavily and like crushing it within that ecosystem. What has HubSpot done so right in building this partner ecosystem that makes you able to build such a thriving business on it? What have they done that others have failed to do? What do you see from your vantage point? And not necessarily in the early days, but like even now, like what are they doing, in recent times to keep that so thriving?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing for HubSpot is like, HubSpot is super partner centric, like as an organization. There's some like 43% of HubSpot customers are attached to a partner. Like they have a partner in their portal, and wow, that's nuts. That's like a crazy number. And I think what they do as an organization is, and I was literally just talking to a Salesforce partner like a week ago who's starting to look at the HubSpot ecosystem and some of this other stuff. And he's like, Salesforce, never cares about us. And we've like become a HubSpot Gold partner because we're just adding Marketing Hub to our Salesforce customers. And like we source way more revenue for Salesforce than HubSpot. And we feel like HubSpot like cares about us more, which feels odd. I think they're this very partner-centric organization. They care a lot about how partners work in their ecosystem. They have dedicated partner managers to folks. They have partner events. Like partners is a core constituency to HubSpot that they care about as much as customers and employees. And I think that that really manifests in how they approach the market, how they build things, how they do stuff. And you see it of like, they have in HubSpot, you can switch seamlessly between all of these different customer accounts. It's in the product in the way that they like have mechanisms for you to get access and open up features to you as a partner. You have direct lines into HubSpot at large. And I think that and I think some of the HubSpot partners, when they get frustrated with some of the changes or things that are happening writ large, I think that it comes from a little bit of like, you know, kind of like, I've never been out of the country. And so how it sort of feels sometimes. And I'm like, things can be really bad with other people. Like they don't care and you have issues and like no one takes you seriously. It doesn't mean that you're always getting a better outcome, but I think that HubSpot really has been very partner centric and they've really worked as the partners are a key constituency we care about and not just like a means by which for us to acquire new leads.
You know, one thing that I have noticed, and you probably know this much better than I, but HubSpot is really good at giving the answers to the test. So when it comes to people that are interested in partnering with them, it's not like, okay, here you go do these things, and then you can
fill
achieve
out this form.
status.
Maybe
they literally are like, here's every step. Like you feel like it's, you know, a tutor that wants you to pass the test, right? So, because I was just talking to a friend who's because I was poking around and learning more about their ecosystem over the last several months, especially, and talking to a friend who runs a really small agency, and he was showing me like they send him this whole, you know, and this is like way down market stuff. He's a one-person agency right now, and he's going to hire a few people. They sent him this whole spreadsheet checklist that's like, here you go. Here's all the things. Go ahead. You fill it out. It's a little workflow. You fill out when you've achieved this and this and this. And then and it's like every single step, we want to show you exactly how to succeed with us and give you all the answers to the test. And like, there's just something to your point. Like it feels like, wow, they want me to succeed. And that's like a cultural thing, you know, it's like, I
think it is so cultural and it is so embedded in how they approach things that I think it's we want you here. We want you to be a part of this. And I think it's really interesting because when you think about how they've adapted that approach and angleness, like it's weird for people because they'll come in and they're like, this is like a very weird kumbaya type of space. And I think that there's times that are weird, right? Where like HubSpot will come to us and be like, hey, like they're running this event right now, as an example, where they're doing like the partner to partner showcase. And the partner to partner showcase is like partners showing other partners things that they've built and how they built them and like doing knowledge share and transfer. And when I first came into the HubSpot ecosystem, I'm like, why would I come to something and give my competitors the secret sauce? And that feels really weird to me. Yeah. And I think what's really interesting is, to be fair, like I think as they've evolved we have a whole bunch of marketing agencies and those marketing agencies do completely different things to completely different customer segments. And the only similarity is they use HubSpot to do it. Now shifting to like, these are partners that are vying for the same deal and the same opportunity and the same implementation work. Some of that hasn't necessarily completely adapted over, but I think that like that attitude in the beginning was met with HubSpot of like, yeah, just come on down.
Is HubSpot coming for Salesforce? If you're Salesforce, how worried are you? I mean, I just looked up their market caps, like 194 billion to 21 billion. So they could be like, yeah, a little HubSpot. That's cute. But like, you know, what my friend TK Coleman always says, would you rather put your money on the guy that looks pretty ripped because he used to go to the gym, but hasn't for a year, or the guy that doesn't look that great, but he's been going to the gym every single day for the last, 6 months? Like it's about that direct, like, yes. I think the answer is yes. I think that HubSpot has said, hey, we need to go build our core CRM platform. They are crushing in the lower end of the market. And to your point, they've kind of become this default choice for early stage startups. And what we're seeing happen is the upper end of the market. Lots of people have Salesforce fatigue. Lots of people are frustrated with how much they spend on the software, the team internally to support it, the external services and consultants that they get in order to make it work, and feeling frustrated by what they're getting. And those customers for a long time have been looking for something else. And for a long time, there just wasn't anything. Like your option was like, you go Salesforce or
you go with like the CRM module of like Sage or
Yep,
NetSuite, and
yep,
like it's
yep.
worse. And I think that those customers are drawn to HubSpot. And I think what's happening and what we see us doing in relationship to like, what's our relationship with HubSpot at this point? Like, we are a co-sell partner. Our job with HubSpot sellers, HubSpot prospects and customers, like my lead form, 100% of the inbound leads on the Aptitude website are, hey, I am a HubSpot customer, or I am HubSpot curious, and I want to build this thing, and I want to do it in HubSpot, and I want to make it work. Can you help us, show us how it's possible? And what's happening is that shifting from, oh, well, the feature doesn't do that or whatever, to like, yeah, we can do that for you. And I think that's how the shift happens, is the product has achieved parity. The market sentiment is still tipping.
This might be sacrilegious to say on the PartnerUp podcasts, but I wonder, I'm just thinking out loud here, if there's a way in which a certain type of partner-centric approach can really harm your ability to go down market. I'm thinking about, Benioff being like, for every dollar that we make, our partners make whatever. The big investment in this partner ecosystem for Salesforce, which obviously has been massively successful. But one of the things I noticed being one of those early stage startups, one of the things that makes you not want to use Salesforce is because immediately I'm not going to be able to set it up myself. I'm going to need to hire a third party because it's complex, it's complicated. Now, that's great for the robustness of that ecosystem, that like you've got these, solutions partners and everything involved. But it really limits that, like if you can't do it out of the box self-serve, that first rung, those first couple rungs on the ladder are not available to you. So it's kind of like, how do you combine that like PLG, early self-serve user with, hey, super users need all kinds of stuff. They need all kinds of, supports around you.
I think what's interesting, right? There are Salesforce partners that source billions of dollars of services revenue surrounding the Salesforce platform. And Salesforce is dependent on the likes of Accenture and Capgemini and Slalom to retain and expand that Fortune 500 customer base. And that is like a massive percentage of Salesforce's net revenue. And so when Salesforce looks at the product, and they look at how the product works, and they look at who they're building and who they're solving for, the avatar of who Salesforce is building features for is the senior architect at Accenture that manages the Pepsi account. And how can we give that person the functionality and ability to deliver something for Pepsi global in all of these different pieces? Like that's who they're building for. HubSpot, by contrast, is building for the VP of marketing, the VP of sales, the RevOps leader, and increasingly this technical operations person who maybe is doing some coding, maybe building some stuff, stringing together systems, cares about the API. But I think that you see that in the way that they build product and what the features do and how they work. And there's certainly some things that can sometimes be frustrating there. And I think that some people are like, well, Salesforce is infinitely extensible and can build everything under the sun. And I think that's right. And I think that if you are a Fortune 500 company today, HubSpot is not on the table for you. But if you're most anyone else, like it absolutely is. And the metaphor that we use
that will be the Fortune 500 companies tomorrow. Yeah.
Right. And I think HubSpot's catching up in that arena fast. The extensibility is crazy. The anecdote that I've been sharing recently is like, back when I did Salesforce work, the number one thing that we had to teach our teams and I had to teach our developers to do is, just because you can build that thing doesn't mean that you should, because if you can build it and it works, it might not be usable for the end user. And we used to not care about that on HubSpot at all, because you just couldn't really build yourself into a corner. That's changing. We're running into situations where like, oh, we can code it, we can build it, we can string together some CMS pages and some serverless functions and some coded actions and some CRM cards, and we can like build this thing that's really intense. And then we have to be like, oh, wow, this isn't usable or maintainable. And like that's starting to happen. And I think that the opening of that means that HubSpot's really nailing this end user usability, extensibility concept, while also allowing for a high degree of customization and tailoring for some of those upmarket customers, which is really where we like to play.
Wait, man, I feel like there's so many things on my list that we haven't.
It just breezes by.
I'm having so much fun. This is an education. So you mentioned that you have this kind of the 4 epochs of HubSpot that you've sort of mapped out. Walk us through that. And yeah,
Sure.
there's kind of like a parallel, like for Epochs that you're seeing happening, moving from like affiliates to agencies.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
membership side. So yeah,
So I think
I love a good framework. So let's go.
this one's new for me, but it's cool. We're getting excited about it. So I think when you think about HubSpot, so I break HubSpot into like 4 different epochs here. So the first one is kind of HubSpot, the marketing software. So HubSpot was started in 2006. They had this marketing software. They had, I think originally the first product was just like a blog builder. Then they were like, oh, we have landing pages, we have email marketing, and we like added more and more functionality. But the HubSpot as a marketing software company was true from 2006 to 2014. And in 2014, they launched the CRM, the first version of Sales Hub on the CRM side, which sort of came out of an acquisition, and they put it in. And at that point in time, I sort of break into like second epoch, which is SMB Growth Software. So SMB Growth Software is like sales, marketing, and the original version of Sales Hub, which today is like where they bundle a lot of the CRM and the sales acceleration stuff, was like email tracking. So literally like it's a Gmail plugin, tracked your emails, and you could schedule emails, and like that was it. That was the whole product. And the original CRM had like, oh, now we have a company record. Before we just had contacts. Now you have like a company record, and you can put them in, and you can create a deal, and you can like move it through some stages, and that was it. And that was SMB Growth Software, where they were like, okay, we're going to take on Pipedrive, we're going to take on Zoho, like we're going to do some stuff at the base level of the market, sales and marketing. Then in 2017, they launched Service Hub. So now you have like what I called like the SMB CRM as like the third epoch in that. SMB CRM is really how do we build on, we have basic service functionality, we have basic sales functionality, we have pretty advanced marketing functionality, and we're continuing to invest there, but we're really building this all in one, out of the box. You're a small business, you need to do sales, marketing, service, you should use our product, and that's who we're solving for. And increasingly, a lot of these upper end customers are using Marketing Hub plus Salesforce to solve bigger and bigger stuff. Yep. And then I think in 2021, when we think about like, when did things really change for Aptitude 8? When do we start saying like, whoa, there is a lot of opportunity in the HubSpot space, was really in 21. And in 21, HubSpot added custom objects. So now you're not limited to companies, contacts, deals, tickets. Like you can build whatever you want, any object for anything under the sun. And Operations Hub, which now you can add code inside of HubSpot, and instead of being limited. So that basically did 2 things. One, your data model is no longer limited to what does HubSpot give you? You can now build it for whatever you want. And your automation functionality is no longer limited to what does HubSpot give you? You can build whatever you want. And so when that happens, it sort of opens up this big platform possibility. And that's really where I think like current HubSpot epoch is like mid-market CRM platform. And now you can build whatever you want on top of HubSpot in order to make it work. And so I think aligning to those, when we think about like epochs of partners and what partners exist in each one of these, is originally HubSpot wasn't that complicated. So you couldn't do that much services on top of it. Like it's hard to do, like you're a blogging platform, people maybe could sell content services. So the majority of the partners, the original HubSpot partners, were affiliates. Like their job was like, we're a marketing agency, we refer people to HubSpot, we get a check. And that's why HubSpot's original model, and it was this way for 10 years, right? 2010, more than 10 years, what, 12 years, 13 years? We're old. What started to happen is in 2010, they added like, hey, we launched the partner program, all affiliates, you resell HubSpot and that's it. Then what started happening is a lot of these partners started to figure out, hey, not only can I resell HubSpot, I can sell services on top of HubSpot. And not only do I make the commission from selling the software, I'm now getting customers on, and I'm doing content marketing, and I'm doing blog creation, I'm doing email marketing. And you had this rise of like the HubSpot agency, and most of them were not like branding or selling themselves as we're HubSpot experts, you should work with us. They're going to market and saying, we're a marketing agency who works with automotive companies, and in order to work with us, you have to buy HubSpot. And now you had this rise of the marketing agency. And what's happened is we're entering this like next, and right when we got into kind of epoch, I think I'm 3, told you it's a new framework. I have to like keep tabbing between these years. But when we got into like epoch 3, what we saw is this rise of like this RevOps type partner who's like, oh, we don't just do marketing services. We do like some sales service stuff. We do some service stuff. We like help you build stuff on top, and we're going to like help you grow and power your flywheel and do all this stuff. And you had a lot of these RevOps firms start to come out of the woodwork, and some of them have grown. A lot of the traditional agencies have started to pivot away and started to say, hey, we want to be RevOps too. We don't just want to be marketing services companies. And what's also started to happen, and I honestly think this is in the last year. So when custom objects came out and when Operations Hub came out, we did this like Operations Hub playbook of here's all this cool stuff you can do with Operations Hub. And that was this mega viral content asset because everyone was like, why would I write code in a HubSpot workflow action? Like, why is that interesting? We were like, here's all this cool stuff you can do with it. And so I think now you're starting to see the very initial parts of technical consulting partners that are starting to come in and say, ooh, we can help a company build really cool operational infrastructure and deliver remarkable, amazing customer experiences. And we can do that on top of HubSpot, the platform. And that's what we do, as opposed to coming in and saying, we can help you use HubSpot, the feature set, to accelerate your growth and help you do all these things. And so I think that as HubSpot has changed, partners have adapted and pivoted and modeled themselves after it. And some of that has been reactionary, but a lot of it has honestly been HubSpot going to market and saying, this is what we need now. And you guys need to look this way because that's the type of partner we need to accelerate and grow.
What an amazing rundown. I love that. I hope you got some visuals that will be coming out at some point.
Yeah. We'll take some of the stuff we have internally and make it into a big blog post, I'm sure.
Oh, I love it. You said that guide when they came out with the, custom objects and all that stuff, that Aptitude 8 made that kind of guide to Ops Hub and everything you could do with it, and it went viral. I just immediately heard that and was like, that right there, that is when you are running your ecosystem first approach effectively, is when you come out with a new feature and it's not, I'm sure HubSpot had content about it too that did very well, but when companies that are servicing your ecosystem, they're introducing content about how to use your product that's going viral. Like that's the ultimate, right? And you see this in any of the really thriving communities. I mean, how many people just make a living just writing content about cool things you can do with Notion or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so let me ask you, do you work with other vendors? Do you do implementations? I mean, I'm sure as you're building out people's stack for them, you're pulling in all kinds of other, are those do you have formal partnerships with anyone else? Are you trying to get certified by any other vendors besides HubSpot?
So we totally
what does that look like? How do they compare?
Yeah. So we totally do. So two that come to mind immediately, well, we have three, right? So we have Syncary, which is a data integration platform, and then High Touch, which is sort of a data warehousing to CRM sync tool that we've used on a handful of occasions. And where we really look at it as those are companies that typically either they approach us or we have more often than not, we're running into a client problem and we're looking for a solution and we're trying to build a thing. And the thing that makes us excited to work with any of those partners is when they can really accelerate our ability to provide value back to that customer. So for us, it's hey, look, we know HubSpot really, really well. We know the problem set really, really well. We're not a typical in-house customer buyer, right? We're coming in and we're really solutioning something and we're trying to figure out that solution. And the faster you can help us validate that the solution we're trying to build for our customer is viable, the faster that we can steer them in the direction of working with you. And the more of those we do, the more we start integrating you into the content that we do, the case studies that we do, and that sort of compounds and accelerates over time. And I think that those are kind of the ways that we think about it. And then we've had a really interesting run with Stripe where at the outset, Stripe came out and said, we're going to build this big partner program. They went and added everybody they possibly could as a partner, and were really into big logos of big consulting firms. And then a lot of that didn't work out as well as they maybe anticipated. And they've kind of pivoted back to, we need partners that are smaller and scrappier and hands on keyboard and technical and helping the mid-market, and not these we're not Salesforce, basically. We're Stripe. We don't need Slalom and Accenture. We need Aptitude 8s of the world, right? And so that's what we're looking for. And so we've kind of had a similar relationship with them, and we'd love to see that relationship get to kind of the HubSpot level for sure.
So when you're at this phase, I think it's really interesting for those out there who are running partner programs and, kind of trying to be in those conversations when companies like yours, you're at that stage with customers where you're running into a problem and you're like, okay, what solutions are there out there? What software exists for this? And you start kind of doing that initial poking around. I mean, it's not like you've never heard of some of these already, but what are in those earliest phases of trying to discover who you might want to work with? What are the first things you're coming across? I mean, are you literally going and just doing Google search and looking at what kind of content you're coming across? Is it word of mouth? What
Yeah.
is it that makes somebody come across your desk as a potential solution for a problem you have with a customer?
It's internal word of mouth first. It's like the first thing that we'll do is like, you see it just like in our internal team
Almost
chat.
like trust is the new data or something, you know?
It's true. I think what happens, right, that we would see is like internally, someone is like, hey, has anyone ever X in our internal team chat? Someone will raise their hand and be like, ooh, actually, I did something similar like that with this client. Here's what they did. I could ask them what tool they were using. And we kind of go through that process. I think next is you'll start to ask anybody that you think has the degree of expertise, right? And then they're going to kind of tell you some stuff. And then last, we'll actually sort of start to formally research stuff and go through those pieces. And I think when you capture that demand, and I think especially from somebody that is like with Hapily as an example, we divvy this out because like partner distribution is our core strategy. And so we think about it a lot of like, is this a one-to-one opportunity or is this a one-to-many opportunity? And if it's a one-to-many opportunity, like it is not a sales process. Like you are not trying to run somebody through a demo and everything else. Cause like they don't have a whole bunch of needs that you're trying to like demonstrate how you can capture. Like they have a specific pointed problem for one particular use case. And once you validate that their one particular use case is solvable, they will open up to all the other things that you might be able to do. But what we find, like, I'm rambling a little bit, but hopefully you're nodding.
No.
For Hapily,
No,
what we do is like, if
ahead.
you are a HubSpot partner and you are asking about a Hapily app, or if we have a customer who installs something and they're connected to a partner, we go reach out to that partner and pull them in. The conversation is immediately, let's show you how this can do the thing you are trying to do and solve that problem. And once we validate that use case, we can start exploring all sorts of other stuff, because you're talking about a technical buyer with a pointed problem who's looking for a pointed solution, which is very different than a business buyer evaluating options and trying to compare and contrast you to a bunch of other stuff. And I think if you immediately go into a demo type of environment with that business buyer, they're going to get lost and they're like, well, what problems do you solve? Why should I care? Whatever else. That solution buyer is like, show me that you can do the thing I need to do. And the longer it takes you to do that, the faster I'm going to get up to speed with an alternative. And then I'm just going to use that alternative, not just for this solution, but for every other solution I come across.
Man, when you were talking, I got so excited, Connor, because I asked you have a problem with the customer. How are you deciding, which software tools you want to go look at as possible solutions? You said three things. And the first was in our internal team Slack, in your trusted community of people, you're saying, has anyone ever X? And then next you're like, hey, who has the expertise on this? And then you're like, and finally, we'll do some formal research. Jared and I have been on this kick lately of this idea that we've moved from the how economy to the who economy. And in the how economy, it's like, how do I solve X, right? And that's mostly Google. You're doing product comparisons like G2. You're trying to get the information about how to solve something. Now that there's just so much information that people have switched to asking who. Who do I know that I can ask about this? And your first two things were who questions. Has anyone here done this? You're asking who on your team has run across this before. You're asking who has the expertise. And so like, that is where and again, I mean, it's right into our thesis with PartnerHacker, like trust is the new data. We're just overwhelmed with all this information. So being in those conversations or partnering with those who already are in those conversations, right? Like that's where it matters. It's those personal connections, those nodes of trust. Oh my gosh, I got so excited when you were saying that. I was like, yes.
I like the term. I think that nodes of trust is like a really good way to think about it.
Yeah. You're just feeding my little narrative so much. It's great. So okay, we haven't even gotten to Hapily. So I want to round it out chatting about Hapily. Really cool to see this announcement recently. I mean, it was only a couple months ago, I believe, that HubSpot Ventures invested in Hapily, which used to be called Aptitude 8 Labs or A8 Labs, which was your, as you mentioned before, you can't help yourself doing these little labs.
I'm always just trying to do a studio again. Like that's basically like all of the time.
All trying to relive the studio days. But talk to me about that. That was really interesting for me to see that HubSpot investing in that and see, like, it just seems like a really interesting that you've got this consultancy over here, and then you've got HubSpot is this big company over here, and they invest in you starting another company that's complementary but independent to Aptitude 8 that is essentially building your own, as far as I understand it, maybe you can explain, but building your own apps and solutions on top of HubSpot. So what made you feel like this was a necessary next step besides your obsession with just
Yeah.
continuing to recreate the
Sure. So the Happily story really starts with A8. We went and we participated in one of the HubSpot was doing app accelerators where they're really inviting people who were entrepreneurs or partners or whoever to like come and build apps on top of HubSpot. So we came up with an idea, which is now Associate, which is one of our most prolific apps, kind of all over the place with thousands and thousands of users. And Associate is basically a VLOOKUP inside of HubSpot. So all it does is it lives in a workflow. You add a record. So let's use an example of like a ticket, right? So you have a form on your website, someone submits the form, you have a field on that form called order number that creates a ticket. And all Associate does is it lets you go and say, okay, take this ticket, go search my database of the deals table, find a deal that has a deal ID that matches the order ID in this ticket and link them together. But what that does is it allows somebody who's like an admin to do stuff that normally you would need code to do. And they can start building like really complex relational databases and all sorts of really cool functionality on top of HubSpot using Associate. And so our first foray into it was like, here's the thing we need it pretty frequently. We should build it. And so we built the app and we put it into the app accelerator and we got a bunch of users and then everything broke because I know how to build one-off products. And what we do at Aptitude 8 is like build a solution for one customer in one portal.
Yep.
But all of a sudden I now had 50 customers and they all were sending me requests and all the requests were getting backlogged. And you had a customer being like, hey, my thing didn't run. And I was like, oh, no, that's true. It's because you're in line behind the guy who submitted 200,000. And you're like, but I don't know that guy. Like, why isn't mine running now? And you were like, well, we have like one queue. I don't really know is the answer because that gets really complicated. And so we sort of really quickly outstripped what we thought Associate, like what we could do. And so I went to the marketplace. I met with tons and tons of people who were building stuff in and around the HubSpot ecosystem and stumbled across Dax and Tyrone, who are now my co-founders on the Happily side. And they were running a company called Alchemist. And nights and weekends, they were building HubSpot apps. So Dax is kind of like a serial entrepreneur, was doing 100 million things as he always does, as anyone who's ever met him. And Tyrone was leading technical M&A at KPMG. And they were kind of nights and weekends building HubSpot apps on the side. Met them and was like, hey, your guys are building really cool stuff. Here's our vision of the future of like, I think that there's going to be a huge ecosystem of people building apps and products on top of and around HubSpot. HubSpot's growing like crazy as a CRM product. There's tons of opportunity to add value to people in that ecosystem. We should do this together. And so we acquired Alchemist. We rolled them into A8. We built out A8 Labs and we sort of started to build all these products. And so that's what we were doing for the better part of 2022. In that process, we have like right now, I think we have like 30, somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 installs across all of our portfolio of apps. And we started talking with HubSpot Ventures and they were telling us how, hey, we really think that somebody needs to go and build this app studio in the HubSpot ecosystem. We're really excited about companies like AppFire, which is in the Atlassian ecosystem, or Bold Commerce in the Shopify ecosystem. And we really need to draw people in to come build stuff on top of HubSpot. The difficulty is we can't really invest in a partner because there's a lot of concerns there for a whole bunch of different reasons. And we don't typically lead investments. So we look for somebody to have like a lead investor, like a Sequoia or an A16Z. And then like we write a tag along check. That's kind of like our jam. So we don't really know how this would work. And so the conversation we had with them was, well, what if we spin this out? What if you guys lead it? And what if we do it as a separate company and we sort of go really heavy in the HubSpot ecosystem? So we all got really excited about this idea. We spun it out as a separate company. And so now Happily is out here building HubSpot apps. And our play is to build a whole bunch of stuff on top of HubSpot for HubSpotters, HubSpot partners, and HubSpot customers.
So for you personally, how is it going so far? I ask you this as someone who ran
Who has similar afflictions.
I had a bootstrap basically services company, right? Not software business that was, running along. And then I tried to build a software platform that was venture backed and run both at the same time. I did it a lot worse and a lot more messy than you did. I made a lot of mistakes there, but just the differences in the incentives when it's like, okay, we got to, bring clients every month. We're running our business, our services business versus what are we trying to invest in and build the software company. Like, does that just fragment your brain, or are you just right in your sweet spot, jumping between those two?
It's definitely hard. I'll say like my years of consulting with multiple companies at once and like context switching and code switching all the time. And I don't know, I have some superpowers that are a little few and far between. But one of them that I know that I can do, that I get credence from other people, is like I can pretty quickly jump between different contexts. And I think it's just like lots of training of, I was a freelancer, I was a consultant, I built this services business on like serving multiple customers at one time and jumping between, business model A to business model C and having those conversations. And so I think one, I'm good at that, and that's been a little bit helpful. They're totally different. I think the other piece is like, I have an incredible leadership team on the Aptitude 8 side, and they run the majority of the business on a day-to-day basis and do a really bang up job. And so on the Hapily side, Dax and Tyrone are amazing. We've really built out a pretty solid team on the Hapily end. And I think about my job and my role is I need to build, maintain, and manage a really strong relationship with HubSpot, the mothership. So I spend a lot of time doing that. I really need to know what HubSpot, the product, is capable of, to both know what types of software we need to be building, but also what kinds of services that could theoretically be provided. And I also need to really understand the HubSpot customer and what the HubSpot customer wants and needs and what problems they're trying to solve. And that scales to both businesses. I think to bring it all the way back to like when I tried to do the studio on my own for the first time, our problem was we started like 4 different separate products and companies and solutions that had completely different markets, completely different segments, completely different solutions. And like, you can't manage all of that. But when I think about what's really become interesting is it's almost given me this like counterweight where when something comes in, we really think about it and are like, is this a Aptitude 8 problem, or is this a Hapily problem? Like, who's better suited to actually handle it? And the lanes are pretty distinct. We really look at it as like, is this a problem that is a one-to-many? We're building a product. We're going to support that product. It's going to be installable by a user. It's going to be configurable by a user. It like really needs to have lower level requirements in order for it to be largely successful. Or are we building something that's specific to one company, one organization, one distinct problem set? And that really helps us guide it towards the organization best suited to solve it.
Yeah. If Jared were here, I think he loves to say this phrase, operating in your zone of genius. And that's where you have multiple layers of value creation all happening simultaneously with a single activity or action. So like your ability that, I'm guessing the reason that these two very different business models and businesses can work at the same time, they both enhance your ability to live in market, like to stay so up to date. So the needs of people who are trying to build out their RevOps and everything in the HubSpot, on the HubSpot stack. But you also know the builders who are building apps there, right? Their world because you're one of them, right? And then the people who are looking to buy or use new apps in the HubSpot. And these things just like feed each other. Each one makes you better at the other thing. And that's like where you get that. That it's so interesting you mentioned that with the lab, because that was one of my own realizations was, trying to spin off a software product from a services business. I did have all of these earned secrets, but they were for a market, a very small niche of the market that behaved totally different from the market as a whole. And I took those assumptions. I built a product that turns out served that niche brilliantly and they loved it, but nobody beyond that niche, because all of my live-in market knowledge came from this tiny subset, and I underestimated how different they were from the rest of the market. But finding the way where they layer on top of each other and saying, look, we're serving the same market with different solutions, right? Like everybody in this HubSpot ecosystem, that those things can actually be additive. So you're not actually pulled in two directions. Like if every time you have a meeting or do something for Hapily, it probably actually makes your work at Aptitude 8 more valuable and vice versa. And that's where
that's the pitch anyway.
That's
the pitch. I think it's true the majority of the time.
Trying to help you justify this decision to yourself,
Exactly. Is it true, or does it really just reinforce my feedback loop? I don't know, but feels good.
I love it. This is absolutely awesome. I feel like we could have gone all the more. We'll have to get you back in. And where, like, if people want to dive into some of the content you're putting out there, is LinkedIn the best place to find you?
LinkedIn, man.
Okay.
LinkedIn's the place to go. I only have the one outlet personally. We have like newsletters and stuff across all of our other channels if you want to check those out. But follow me on LinkedIn. I talk about this stuff all the time. If you're interested in this stuff, reach out. I'm exceedingly accessible. I often get like, whoa, you were replying to me really fast. You're actually going to talk to me. And I was like, yeah, I'm happy to. So feel free to reach out.
Exceedingly accessible. I like that.
Much to the chagrin of all of my loved ones.
Hey, trust me, I can relate to that. My wife's like, have you ever thought about not doing the zero inbox thing? Connor, it's so awesome to talk with you. Partner up. Peace out. We'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you.